My name is Scott Morin. I'm a senior designer on the Encounters team. We get to make a lot of the cool creatures and bosses you fight in World of Warcraft. Liberation of Undermine is an upcoming raid in 11.1. Players will get to go into the city of Undermine, where Gallywix and his cronies have set up shop. It's a really good opportunity for us to do something more crazy and zany that fits the goblin tone. So for the Encounters team, the process starts fairly early. We have a list of potential bosses, and we brainstorm them. Whatever the coolest thing is that makes sense for the fantasy and whatever story we're telling. Also, if it gives us a chance to do some gameplay we've never seen before, we gravitate towards those fights. Mugsy, the Heads of Security, is the penultimate boss fight in the Liberation for Undermine. He's a two-headed ogre. It was pitched by another designer on the team. What if the Galagio had not just one head of security, but two, in the form of a two-headed ogre? The inspirations for Mugsy kind of came from everywhere.
Yes, master.
There was such a rich source material to pull from in Warcraft for ogres. I myself love ogres. They're big, they're dumb, they have cool magic, they cast one of the most iconic spells of all time, Bloodlust. And on the other half, we looked at a lot of mobster movies and crime movies and tried to hit on those notes of he is the head of security trying to lock you down, and he's a corrupt gangster. And so he summons in all these cool goblin tech toys. Here you can actually see some early concept of Mugsy, and you can see I kind of kit bashed his weapon, what it may look like. And then right over here we have what he ended up looking like after going through the 3D modeling and texturing process. One inspiration for Mugsy goes all the way back to Cataclysm and Firelands with Major Domo Staghelm, this concept of a boss whose abilities are controlled by players' positioning. We wanted to see what that would look like in current World of Warcraft. One of the design challenges was figuring out how players can trigger essentially two different boss fights in one single space. And you'll find that Mugsy switches what head is in control based off where players are in the arena. So this is actually the first video we have of Mugsy. Was prototyping what side was in charge. So whenever the player, or majority of players, crosses the center threshold of the room, we swap which head is in charge. Here's another video demonstrating the earliest prototype for mines. They don't even come from the boss, they just kind of appear, do a huge explosion. With Mugsy, I'm really excited to see how players manage both heads at the same time when they choose to swap over, because there's a very big difference in what abilities he'll be casting on either side. And there's a lot of agency in players' hands on how they control that.
My name is Valentina Viliva, and I do VFX on World of Warcraft. I worked on the Ogre boss and Rick Reverb, making sonic and explosion effects. Whenever we make an effect, our main goal is always it has to communicate gameplay. We don't add things just because we want to make it flashy. We redid a lot of the target rims for the players to know where to stand and what is damaging, so we define the boundaries better. We do think about all these elements, and everything is there for a reason. For the explosion, my main focus was creating something large scale that would feel very damaging and would cover a big portion of the screen. Yeah, so this effect was actually a part of a bigger kit that we're making that would be, it's an explosion kit, so it's something that's physical, has a bit of fire to it, lots of damaging, lots of debris. And for this explosion, I created a sculpt, and the way I broke it down is 3 pieces: the bottom part, vertical impact, and then the mushroom cap. The goal was to use these meshes for the explosion because we're using a mesh workflow where we scroll a material and the texture on the mesh to make it feel like fire is burning through it. So it's like the first test I did on the mesh and kind of like trying to see like, can I make it look like fire is burning? I did a fun test where I was locally overriding his files in the client, which resulted in this. I was like, that's a good way to test if the game will crash or not. Sonic Kid is our sound kit. In this case, because we're working with the promoter, he's using a lot of sound magic against the players. One of the effects that I made is an aura that gets placed on you that creates a lot of waves around you. Sound is a lot of like repeating waves, like Doppler effect. So we're focusing a lot on creating the language of like repeating waves and like sine waves. Over the years, we've really made a big effort to define the art style, making sure we don't mix too many things together so it becomes looking like a big mush of different elements. So in this case, when we were defining the kit, we were making sure it didn't look too close to fire, it didn't look too close to wind. It was unique to its own.
My name is Jongmo Nam, and I'm a senior character artist in the World of Warcraft team. My mission was to visualize the goblin called Rick River. They want me to make a device that attacks using sound waves. When I first heard about the story of this character, a home audio system came to my mind. The first step is the thumbnail stage. You can think of this as the brainstorming phase. I gather and combine all kinds of references. During this stage, I actively discuss idea with my team. I select the thumbnail that best fits the concept and refine it further. During this process, small details might change. For example, I like the shape of the metal piece covered on the front, but the grill feels a bit off when compared to traditional goblin aesthetics. So I asked myself, if I were a goblin, what would I put there instead? I landed on the idea of a massive battery with the ominous green glow. The final stage is modeling and texturing. This phase demands a high level of precision. So when you're looking at this one, so it's actually flat, gray. You're gonna paint over on this model. Usually I'm starting with the black and white like this, and then just make the value first, and then putting the colors after. After the texture done, you're gonna testing it, the WoW engine, the tumbling engines and pipes or the speaker sounds effect isn't just about modeling and texture. They come to life through collaboration with the tech team, the prop team, animation, FX team. Throughout this process, we constantly inspire one another.
I'm Teresa Kim, and I'm a sound designer.
I'm Jake Archer, and I'm a sound designer. You usually go into the Foley room with like a vibe, but you don't really necessarily know what the feeling sounds like. So it's always fun and playful, and usually end up with really good results. We're creating bad sounds. I think that was a bit of a challenge. There was times when I was in my room and I was like, is this good? But it's good because it's bad. Teresa and I created a palette of sounds for the Undermine patch. It's kind of like a library for the whole team to then utilize when they're creating sounds as well.
So Garliwix has a huge daunting mechanic body. I went to antique store and then I asked them do you guys have anything can make sounds? And they gave me old toy car and then milkshake maker.
Some of the recording in the Foley room, we used a ultrasonic microphones. The human hearing range is usually 20 hertz to 20,000. So this goes all the way up to 100,000. And what that really helps with is when we're pitching around sounds, we have all that extra information. So if we pitch something down really, really low, we're still hearing it like we recorded it at that level.
So this is electronic magnetic microphone. Then I pick up the sound from the displays. And also I took some sound on the outlet. For the goblin palette work, I demonstrate high, mid, and low frequency to give more freedom to use for the sound designers. Garliwix, maybe he casts huge attack for the players, then we can hear this sound as well. So I put some random sequencer on it, so that's why the static sounds bouncing around. So if I turn off this plugin, then we only can hear the electronic magnetic wave sound from display. But if I add some texture on it, then it sounds a little bit like goblin.
It's interesting designing sounds for a video game because you need multiple files. Everything needs to be switching up all the time. If you hear the same thing over and over, subconsciously the player knows that it's not really right and you just really want to create the immersion.
My name is Josh Miramontes and I'm a sound designer on World of Warcraft. Palette building is where we got started, which was all of us sound designers going to the hardware store, going to antique shops, finding anything we could, and sharing that across the team. And then everybody was then reaching into that palette and creating their sound effects with that. And that allowed me, as the sound designer implementing for Garliwix, to just go in and I would be like, I need a zap. And it'd be like, oh my gosh, look at this, incredible. There's all these incredible zaps. My job as a sound designer is to inform the players that something is happening. It's a lot of talking to the designer and understanding their intent of this spell will wipe the raid. So I will make a list of like, these are the big moments in the raid encounter that are going to harm people to the point of wiping them, and I just need to make those punch. It's all about just mixing in a way that informs the player, like something should be grabbing your ear to let you know that something really bad is gonna happen.
I'm Derek Duke. I'm music director here at Blizzard Entertainment. Yeah, this is a really great update to work on because we get a chance to really dive into the goblins again. When we kicked it all off, Leo and I sat down to really go back and take a listen to all of the previous goblin work that we'd done before and dig into the jazz roots. From the very moment you're in there, you'll hear a difference and feel a difference, having been recorded with a jazz ensemble. So part of the process is we want to explain the character of the goblins, and when a soloist improvises, they interpret it. And so by giving descriptors and helping the players understand the characters of the goblins more, they can get into character. It helped eke out so much more feeling and vibe from the performances.
My name is Leo Kaliski, and I'm the lead composer on World of Warcraft. This patch was unique because of the jazz band. We decided we wanted to record them differently. For this one, it felt really important to do the group all together on the same day, to get them in the same room and get them playing off each other so it felt more authentic. It's always a little bit different once, a person is playing it and it's not you sitting in front of a computer, and you kind of have to, with your limited time in the session, decide like, do you like their version of it, or do you want to ask them to, do it again to get it closer to what you had in mind? With this patch, we kind of wanted their version. We would often be like, yeah, this is the melody, but feel free to embellish it. And usually those were the takes that ended up in the final version over what we originally wrote. And then finding a way to process it and produce it to kind of have some of that craziness in it as well. So we did stuff like sending some of the saxophones to like guitar amp processing, or like, putting like phasers, chorusers, and distortions on it, like stuff like that to help add in some of that wildness again. This on its own is that like guitar amp layer. It almost sounds a little bit like a guitar at that point with that type of performance, and like the phaser really comes through there, which kind of felt natural for like the bright lights and the colors and the collagio. Here's what it is all together. So it's also quite a bit of reverb, which if this were like a album release version of it would be way too much. But once you turn it way down and put it in the background in game, that reverb has a way of just disappearing. And it helps it like blend into the world a little bit more. The raid is interesting because often the raid is in a totally separate space that you only ever see as part of the raid. It's the same city. It's just that it's in the middle of this battle. Six Bug Chunker is at least the only boss that I can remember from WoW where a specific ability got specific music. We don't ever really do that. WoW boss music is kind of simple in that, the fight starts, the boss music starts. Maybe it changes with phases. But this one, the designer, Matt Villers, who made this boss, approached us early and showed us this ability where you get up on this trash ball and like roll around the whole arena, picking up trash so that you can blow up a bomb before it blows you up. And he was like, hey, can we do unique music for this? So we like went back and forth with him for a while, making sure that like the spell hookups were in there, and he had to make unique spell hookups to stop the music because otherwise the music would have started for the trash ball and just not stopped ever. And then we kind of had to decide like what would the music be there. It actually ended up working out really well that we used the same music that we're using for a drive, and it had the right energy, and something about driving around a trash ball felt like the music still worked for that. So it's using a like different variation of that track.
So the liberation for Undermine has been a ton of fun for the whole team. It's such a nice change of pace for us and players to do something more wacky and zany that we just get to let loose with.